Well, the war has just started. I don't think people understand that.
Yeah.
Israel is in for a long war, whether it wants it or not. And we are about to join it because I think President Trump's announcement that he was going to take the next 2 weeks to think about it is nonsense. I think the decision has been made. In fact, I have sources on the inside telling me that it's been made. And Iran is different from the other states that they've faced. Iran is a large continental power. The United States is preeminently an air and maritime power. We are not going to commit large ground forces. We don't have them to commit. And Iran is almost the size of Western Europe. Put France, Germany together, part of Spain and northern Italy, and you have Iran. That's an enormous area. You don't mobilize forces and move into a place like that quickly. The Jewish state's hegemony, we think, is in our interest because it involves the conquest and securing of the oil and gas fields in the region. This has to be understood. Mr. Netanyahu has infinitely more control and influence over the U.S. Congress than President Trump does. And President Trump is effectively his instrument. He's not going to do anything or say anything that Mr. Netanyahu doesn't want him to say. He's been on the phone recently to Mr. Netanyahu, and people that overheard the conversation have mentioned that, he talks in gangster terms about what they're going to do. Well, we'll break their legs because Iran is far more technologically advanced today and far more capable than it was 20 years ago. We tend to talk about Iran the way the Israelis do. They treat it as though 46 years have not passed. And Iran is just this backward Muslim state that can be bullied and attacked at will. It's not going to happen because I think the Iranians have some surprises for them. But this is where we're headed. Secondarily, we're talking about damaging these uranium enrichment facilities or nuclear development facilities. I'm not sure we believe that we can destroy them. I think it's very dangerous. I think the whole thing is very complex, and I don't think ultimately it will work. But we will see. In the meantime, the Chinese, the Russians, and others, Pakistanis, and not just those, but other countries have poured assets into Iran to help the Iranians defend themselves. I think some of these will make a difference. So this is no cakewalk. And this is going to be very dangerous and very complex. Israel is a small colony that sits on the Mediterranean. And it is acting as though it's a great power because it has unconditional support from us. It's to become a pariah state all over the world. We're going to be hated and despised for what we're doing. We already are, but it's only going to get worse because the war is going to get worse. Now, you mentioned something else that I think is very important to explore. You said, look at all the pushback in the United States. I don't see it. The American people aren't paying that much attention. The average American is worried about whether or not he can get a six-pack of beer tonight and watch the game on TV. What I'm trying to tell you is optics are one thing, reality is another. President Trump has always been very much about optics. And optics right now in the United States are these magnificent pictures of aircraft carrier battle groups steaming through pristine waters in beautiful sunshine with all these airplanes. But we have learned over many, many decades, the ultimate impact of these things is minimal, if any. And again, we go back to the original point. You talked about how do you support this? How do you rearm? How do you replenish? It's very difficult. We're betting once again too much on what the Israelis bet on to begin with, a knockout blow. Big mistake. This is a continental power. It can absorb serious punishment, and it will fight back. What happens when we do start to take losses? What happens if we lose any capital ships? What happens when the bases that we occupy are blown up? Then the Americans who are otherwise enjoying their beer and watching the game will say, wait a minute, what's this? How many of us were killed? Why? What are we doing there? I don't remember being asked about this. Was there any debate in Congress? No. Mr. Netanyahu owns Congress. There's no debate. They're all lining up to have their pockets filled with cash and doing whatever Mr. Netanyahu wants. And so is Mr. Trump.
At this point, though, do you think the Americans or Israelis could use a tactical nuclear weapon?
I think there's a real possibility that in desperation, the Israelis will. And ultimately, there may be voices arguing for that. That's why I mentioned the MRR, minimal residual radiation, low yield nuclear warheads. There could be. I think it's a very serious mistake. I think that's a degree of escalation that we should not move to under any circumstances. But remember, you're dealing with arrogance and self-delusion. That's a dangerous combination that inevitably results in failure. And we are all about arrogance, all about self-delusion. I wish it were not the case, but it is.